How you doing, folks? Well, glutton for punishment that I am, I'm going to start replacing the cylinder head on my damaged AHU engine in my T3 camper van. Okay, so we start the task in my garage, simply because behind me here on the bench is the replacement cylinder head, okay? Now, what I want to do is I want to take the valves out and relap them. I've already given it a bit of a preliminary clean externally, but I'll show you one of the valves here now, and I'll show you the reason why I want to relap them. Yeah. So, we can't be having that. Anyway, the other side of it is I actually poured a bit of petrol into the inlet port on that particular cylinder, and the petrol just poured straight out even with the valve closed, so it's obviously not sealing at all. So relapping is the order of the day, and we'll get that done. And what I'll do is I'll show you quickly me doing one of them, and then I'll do the other 7, and we'll come back at that stage. There's going to be probably about 2 days of work on this, so I'll be quite heavily editing this video, I'd imagine. I don't really need to get into the finer details unless I think it's particularly interesting, but me doing up loads of bolts and all that sort of stuff is not that exciting. Anyway, right, valve lapping first. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is clean off the valve stem. This is a brass brush, by the way, on this, so it's not going to do any major harm, and I'm only going light on it anyway. Good enough. The stuff comes off very easily. What it is it's just gack coming in from the EGR valve, basically. I might just give the face of it a little clean there, but yeah. Next thing to do is I'm going to clean out the port on the head. Alright, so I'm going to just shed a little bit of light on that there and have a look down into the port of the head and see what the state of play is with it. Hopefully it's not too gapped up. And I'll inspect the valve seat. My trusty phone torch comes in handy once again. Okay, so there's a bit of build up around there, but I don't see any. No, that's alright. Once we've wiped it out, I think it should be alright, and then we'll relap the valve and we'll move on to the next one. Don't worry, I bought another 2 cans of brake cleaner. It's great stuff for this kind of job. Alright, so there you go. That's the kind of shite that's coming out of it. There's a little nick on the valve seat there. It must have pulled something in at some stage or another, but I won't worry too much about it so long as we can get a good seat. It's not like I'm using the bottom end of this engine, so if there was any scoring in the bore or anything like that, it doesn't really matter to me. It doesn't matter at all, actually. Alright, have another look. Yeah, that's not bad. The nick isn't going down into the valve seat itself. It's only on the actual aluminium part. So there'd be a steel insert in the valve seat in these, because the aluminium would just recess into the head. So we couldn't have that. So yeah, but that looks okay. So yeah, get my valve grinding paste out and we'll do a job on that. Okay, so this is the fine grade stuff. And I'm going to put it around the seat. And where's the valve gone? There it is. Okay, just put it around the sealing face of the valve. Now, it is vitally important that if you're doing this, that the valve grinding paste is is taken off, and B, that when you're doing it you don't get any on the stem, because you don't want to grind the valve guide. You're only literally looking to do the seat. Okay, now plunger, and you listen for a note change. he says, as if he knows what he's talking about. Well, I've done this a couple of times before. Alright, so that sounds pretty good. So let's take the valve out. We'll have a look. And we're looking for a nice even contact ring right the way around. I think we can go a bit more than that. Okay, so now you can see around there, there's essentially there's a continuous grey line right the way around. It might not have shown up on camera, but it's certainly there anyway. The continuous grey line around the valve and the grey line around the seat as well, and that's basically your sealing surface. So now let's remove all our grinding paste. And that's one valve done basically. I just had to put it back into the head. You can see it better there now actually after removing the valve grinding paste. You can see the nice sealing surface we have there. So that's fantastic. So it's not going to take much to kind of reseat these valves, but it's time well spent as far as I'm concerned, because there's no point in having to head off like this, knowing that there's a sealing problem and then just hoping for the best. You know, I mean, that's why I checked in the first instance. Okay, so as you can see, I have the valve spring compressor on. Why they felt the need to put such a stubby little bloody handle on the valve spring compressor, I do not know. I mean, that's alright if maybe you're doing a lawnmower engine or something like that, but this thing has double valve springs in it, and you cannot push it hard enough to get the valve springs down. So anyway, what I did was I put a length of box section on the handle and wanged it down that way. Not ideal, but it worked. So now, the valves are down. It's a crap valve spring compressor, and the other thing I had to do is I had to modify it here. Because it was fouling on the top of the cylinder head, so the only way to get it in at the valve spring was to take a lump out of it here, and I just welded a piece back on there. Crude it may be, but it works. So, you know, if it works, is it really wrong? You get the gist, folks. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to get all of the other 7 valves done, and I'll come back to you when I'm finished. Alright, I got the valves all seated. It took me about a little over an hour, I think, so that's not actually bad going at all. I thought it would take a lot longer, to tell you the truth. There were a few of the valves that I had to use the heavier cutting paste on because there was some pitting on the seats, but I am glad I took the valves out. The valves will tell you quite a lot about the condition of an engine. In fact, when you take them out, you'll actually see what condition. If the valves are in bad condition, the likelihood is the rest of the rest of the engine is not going to be in good order either. But obviously that doesn't really matter in this instance because we're only using the head, as I said earlier on. So yeah, next thing I need to do is I need to reinstall the camshaft. There is obviously the sealing face off the cylinder head. It's not bad. There's a little bit of pitting around there, but that's only in the combustion chamber. The valve itself has a bit of impact damage on it there on the exhaust side. So I'm not sure exactly what happened there, but anyway, the valves are seated fine anyway, so that's grand. That's all I really care about in that instance. I had to use the tiniest little smear of JB Weld there on the sealing face, just because there was a little bit of corrosion. I just wanted to make sure that was actually going to seal fine, but that should do the trick. JB Weld is serious stuff, so there should be no issue. And anyway, that's not keeping compression away, it's only just for the water jacket. That's a bolt hole, it's not an oil passage. So yeah. Alright, so I did actually give it a little preliminary kind of clean in here. I didn't go too mad on it, but just enough so that, you know, we're not kind of introducing any unnecessary dirt into the engine. There's a few little areas I'll go at again, but it's pretty good. It's pretty good. I think we'll be alright. So the next thing to do is I need to install the cam followers. Now, I was very careful to ensure that the cam followers are stored in such a way that I know exactly which way they go in. So yeah, should be pretty good in that one. We'll get them dropped in. You need to put some oil in around there first of all. So I'll oil everything up, drop the followers in, put the camshaft on, lubricate the saddles of the camshaft obviously as well, and then we'll get it all together. So the torque is 20 Newton meters, and it says to do bearing caps 2 and 4 alternately and diagonally, and then put in then do 1, 3 and 5. So we're going to do... Okay, so that head is now ready to install, so let's go over to the van and start taking the old head off. Alright, there's nothing for it than to just get stuck in. There's a bit involved in this, in fairness, and just have to take my time and work through it, and when I get to the end, stop. So wish me luck, folks. Number 3 injector needle lift sensor. That's why that one has a wire going onto it, for those of you who don't know. My understanding is that that's actually what's used for setting the timing on the pump. That on the crankshaft position sensor. Right, okay, so next thing is the inlet pipe. I'll drain the coolant now in a little while as well. Get that on the go, because there's coolant in the head, and if you take the head off without draining the coolant's going to go in the oil and everything. I will change the oil after I've done the job, but not before I actually have it running, unless I'm afraid that I've gotten too much contamination in it. We'll just play it by ear. The one I'm really not looking forward to undoing are the turbo bolts down there. They're going to be great fun altogether. I think what I'll do is I'll get that inlet pipe out of my way altogether, and then we'll see if we can have at it then. Then afterwards we'll drain our coolant. I need to figure out how this plate comes off the front as well. I think it's just a case of taking off the fuel pump pulley, and it goes on in the back. I need to figure that out, because that panel, it will need to come off. Kind of annoying. There you go. I assume the pump is bolted. Yeah, it's bolted to the block, thank God, because otherwise I don't have to take the fuel pump off again. That'd be a really annoying job to have to do. Alright, while it's held in there, I'm going to take out the glow plugs now, because some of these things can be just awkward when the thing is moving around on you, so I'm going to just crack them loose anyway. Well, actually you could take them out, there's holes anyway there, because the injectors are out. The head I got off my friend Trev is a bare head, so there's no glow plugs or injectors or anything like that in it, so that's why I'm having to recover my own, which is understandable. It's expected. Anyway, either way I would be doing that, because the injectors I have in the engine are actually, they've been overhauled, so, and they have slightly larger nozzles in them, so I want to reuse them. Alright, glow plugs and injectors removed. Next thing to do is, yeah, let's tackle those turbo bolts now before while I'm still willing. Now I need to get a 12-point deep socket, or 12-point socket. It's going to be awkward to get at, but look at, we'll manage. Might be easier to get at it from underneath. I need to take the exhaust off again as well, because I'll have to put the bottom pulley on again. The bottom pulley, actually, the bolt in it is a stretch bolt, so I must have taken some doing to actually undo that. I have a new bolt for it, by the way. Okay, so I have the turbo unbolted from the exhaust manifold now. It was a kind of an on the back job, 4 bolts basically on the flange. So I've left the intake or the exhaust manifold on the head, and I'm hoping I'll be able to take the take the head off with it still attached, because that will make it an awful lot easier. However, I don't think I'm going to be able to, no, I know I'm not going to be able to get the head off without taking, oh hang on a second, they're bolts not studs. Actually that's not too bad, so I might be able to leave the intake manifold on. Oh, that's good. Yeah, so I don't have to take the intake manifold off until I get it off. I was just thinking, like, the last head I've taken off was the MGB, and that has studs, so you take the nuts off, but this has bolts going right down, so you don't have to lift to clear the studs, which makes it an awful lot easier. But yeah, okay, so I'll leave it on. I'll see how I get on. If I need to take it off at that stage, then I can. Next thing to do is I want to drain the coolant, because I already told you why. So let's get that done, and hopefully I don't drown the place, and then I can get the plate here off, the one that the idler pulley for the timing belt is on, and the yeah, there's a bit in it, but I don't think it's too big a deal. So we're getting there, folks. We are getting there. So let's stay the course here. Okay, so the coolant is drained now, and I just basically took off the bottom, the lower hose on the water pump, and took out the thermostat housing. So that's basically the block drained, but the radiator should still have a bit of coolant in it. So that's all well and good anyway, but we'll be topping that up anyway one way or another later on. So yeah, that's fine. Turbo's disconnected. Next thing to do now is I'm going to have a look at taking off this plate. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the idler pulley for the timing belt. So that's this lad here. Okay, so this bolt for the fuel pump needs to come out, but the other ones can stay in, so that's good. There's a 10mm bolt there, and there's another one on the other side of the head, so they can come off, and so we'll do that now. We'll take those off first. Where do you think you're going? There you go. Now, one on this side. I'm really curious to see what's actually going on inside this engine when I take the head off. Of course, what I really don't want to see is a broken piston or scored bore or something that condemns the bottom end, because I will throw a tantrum if that's the case. One thing I did not do when I obviously wasn't videoing when my mistake happened, and I had a bit of a moment to myself. I'd been all day at it, and for something to go so catastrophically wrong, and for it to ruin our weekend, essentially, we couldn't go away in the van then as well. I honestly welled up a little bit. I was like, the fact that it wasn't carted off on a butterfly net is, I'll never understand. Alright, okay, so that should be, yeah, that's it. Okay, handy enough. That's the plate I was trying to take off. So yeah, it's a backing plate for a timing belt cover, basically. An awful faff to have to take off for removing the cylinder head. My wife very kindly dropped me out a cup of coffee, which is nice. So I'm kind of taking a break just to take stock of the situation as to where I'm at this point in time. Nearly ready to take the cylinder head off, which is great. And yeah, basically it's just a case now of what else do we need to do? I still need to take the coolant pipes off the head, so and just make some access, just a bit of wiring kind of in around the head. I just need to kind of disconnect and stuff like that, and then I can start cracking some head bolts. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a couple of guide studs out of the old head bolts. You have to replace the head bolts when you're doing this job, by the way. If you're ever changing a head gasket on a Volkswagen diesel engine, they're stretch bolts, they're single use only. You have to throw them out and get new ones. So I will use these to make up new make up guide studs to guide the head on, and then I will be able to I'll get the proper bolts in at that stage. Alright, so down around here there's some kind of finicky bits of wiring and associated paraphernalia, so I'm actually just going to try and get as much of it as I can out of the way, because wiring is fragile, as we all know. And come on, get out, you bastard. There we go. Right, so that's fuel pump wiring, the main wiring harness for it anyway. That can go, I'll go over there. so we can get this pipe off. And actually, yeah, no, I will. I'll take both of those pipes off. I'm going to go and get the tool I bought for taking off those really annoying clips. Yeah, we take that pipe off, and then there's another one down here as well, and there's also a couple of wiring connections. And oh no, don't tell me the bloody yeah, that's all bolted onto the head, isn't it? That's gonna be great fun altogether. There's a big wiring harness connection point at the back of the head there. I have to try and get that all off as well. And then of course I have to try and get it to all work again after I put it back together. Marvellous. This is the tool, by the way. Basically you squeeze it and those little jaws come together and squeeze the clip. It helps a little bit, but to be honest, it's not as, it still doesn't make them as easy as I would like. Alright, so there's one pipe off, devoid of coolant obviously because the system has been drained. Absolutely unbloody believable. So that's that tool broken. For feck's sake. More cheap Chinese shite. I wouldn't mind. You actually, even when you pay for quality, you get cheap Chinese shite. Like, you know, that's the bloody problem about it. That's fucking annoying, that, isn't it? So now I have to contend with these stupid clips the old-fashioned way with the vice grips. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to leave the connections all as they are down there, and I'm going to take off just two 10mm nuts on the pipe flange that goes onto the head itself. And I'm going to take them off. Easier said than done. This engine was never supposed to be in this van in the first place, folks, so don't forget that. And I'm refusing out of principle to go and get my jack and work underneath it. If I can do everything up above, then I'll be a happier man, because it's been raining a lot the last while, and the song going through my head today, if you want some music to listen to after the video, is Old Fashioned by Frightened Rabbit. Very good song. Everybody has music goes through their head when they're doing jobs like this. If you don't, there's something wrong with you. It's funny, there's a song called Old Fashioned when I'm working on a TDi engine. It'll be going through my head, but there you go. Take carbs and distributors any day of the week. Ah, Jesus. Right, I'm going to be taking that pipe off anyway. I'll get another glove and regroup. Okay, so far as I can tell at this point in time, everything is off the head that needs to be off the head. So let's start undoing the head bolts and we'll get this thing off. Okay, so you don't just start wanging bolts out left, right and centre, okay? There is actually an order to doing it in. You do it in the same order as they go in, because otherwise the head will warp. So I'm going to start here. Alright, there's one. There's a serious torque on these bolts, by the way. 2, 3, 4 over here. So that's them all cracked loose. So now I'm going to buzz them out with a windy gun. Well, the electric impact gun even. And part of me hoping, by the way, when I take this off, that I actually find some problem with the head that's been causing my poor performance all along. Actually, there's a huge part of me hoping that. which will make it definitely worthwhile having done this, because at the moment the only reason I'm doing it is because of the fact that I made a complete and utter bollocks of the situation in the first instance. Alright, okay, so let's see if it'll lift off. Probably won't, it'll probably be something I forgot to disconnect. Jesus. Well, there's oil in the water anyway. It's a bit heavy. Okay, the head is now off, and I'll retrieve our head gasket now in a second. It's fairly well stuck on there. I'm going to shed a bit of light on the subject, and we're going to inspect the pistons next. Okay, so I sincerely hope that's not a crack. Oh, for fuck's sake. I'll just try and rub it with a bit of emery and see. There's a little bit of impact damage on the piston. I'm thinking I'm just going to try and get away with it though. The hits just keep on coming. What do, I suppose? I mean, the thing about it is, if it is cracked, put it back together and just operate it and see how it see if it lasts all right. You know, I mean, it might last 1,000 miles. It might never cause a problem. But the other option is to the only other option then is to change the whole bloody engine, and I'm not doing that. Not if I don't have to. That's just an absolute nightmare. This was worth taking the head off anyway. So that'll be number 3 inlet then, is actually which one hit. So let's have a look at the valve. I'm going to have a bit of a ponder while I charge my camera and transfer a few bits and pieces from one cylinder head to the other. So I'm sure you can fill in the blanks with that anyway, and we'll reconvene. I've consulted one of my friends, the guy who actually gave me the cylinder head, asked him what he thinks is the curtains for the engine, or what would he do. It's one of those things, is like, you know, anybody can say when they're not doing the job that they would just replace the whole engine, but when you have to go and replace the whole engine, you start to rethink the situation. So anyway, right, we'll come back in a little while. Okay, so I've had a bit of a think, and I've been doing a little bit of noodling here off camera, and my reckoning, and this reckoning is definitely shared by Trev, I had a chat with him on the phone, is that the damage on the piston was not caused by this incident. And part of my reasoning for that is because of the fact that the impact on the piston left no kind of witness marks, if you know what I mean. Like, the carbon build-up was the same right the way around, so you would expect that if it had just happened and the engine hasn't been run since, that you'd see some of the carbon rubbed off the piston around the crack or whatever, and that's not the case. So I think that that's happened before. Now if you look at the piston, you can see there's various other marks all around here as well, and that to me has been caused by a running issue on the engine. Now it's shared on this piston a little bit as well, but this one's not so bad, to be honest with you. I think we'll get away with that one. There's a little bit of pitting on it, but this one's bad. Now to me, that's caused by a problem with a spray pattern off an injector, or some pre-detonation issue or something along those lines. So number 3 injector may have been faulty. It might still be faulty, I don't know, but it's definitely a question to be asked. So I'm going to change the piston, and that means taking the sump off. So I'm going to take the sump off now. I'm going to take the piston out. Trev is sending me a replacement piston off a second-hand engine, and I'm going to pop that in with the rings that are in this engine, so that I'm not going to replace all the rings. You know, I mean, taking one piston out is one thing, taking all 4 out is a whole other ball game, and I'm not going down that route. So take number 3 piston out, and we'll go from there. And yeah, so I have the oil drained out of the engine there now, and I have the I'm making a start on taking the exhaust off. It's getting deep. We're in deep here, folks.
There's no point in me just throwing the head on and hoping for the best. Cracks never get better of their own accord. They only ever get worse. What'll happen is that crack will spread, and I will end up with a pain in my crack, because what'll happen is we'll be up in Donegal or something like that, or some beautiful part of the country, and the engine will have an absolute guinea, and we'll be stuck on the side of the road with an engine that is totaled and needs replacing. So the way to do it here is, I now know what's inside this engine, and I know that if I replace number 3 piston, the rest of the parts seem to be okay, and we should be able to drive on. But the thing is, I could go replacing the whole engine, and I don't know, maybe I might end up getting just another pig in a poke, which is what this engine turned out to be in the first instance, and I'll just be chasing more trouble. And at least I'm halfway there. Well, at least I hope I'm more than halfway there on this. Let's get that sump off anyway. And look, it's a ring of bolts around the bottom of the sump. I have to take the exhaust off, take the sump off, and then when I have that off, I'll bring you back and I'll show you me removing the bearing cap. Just looking on number 1 piston here, you can see there's a bit of pitting on it. I think that's probably from it pulling in shrapnel from when the turbo let go. When I bought this engine, the turbo was actually gone, so I'd say a few little bits of metal came through, but to be honest with you, the bores are in good enough condition. I won't worry too much about them. But if you look at number 1 piston there, you can see there's a ring around there. Now that's where the valve comes down, okay, and there's a witness ring there. I think this is the piston that actually hit the valve, hit a valve as well. So that would be the more likely the damage that I would have expected to see in number 3 as well, if that were actually the case. But as I said, I don't believe for a second that the damage that's not on number 3 piston there is was caused by the timing belt coming off. I think that was caused by something else, and I think we're just finding we're finding witness marks essentially from the rough running I was talking about all along. So anyway, I'm going to keep going and get that sump off. I seriously dropped the ball when I put the sump on before putting the adapter plate on, because the problem is the adapter plate for the gearbox covers 2 of the bolts for the sump. Now the only thing I can think of doing is, you can see them, you can just about see them, and I might be able to get this little bit in at them and try and retrieve them, but whether they'll come out through whether I can actually get the bolts themselves out once I've loosened them is another. Well, I will be able to actually, because I'll be taking the sump off at that stage. Still though, for fuck's sake, why can't things just be easy? Like literally, I don't even know if I'll get that bit in, whatever about the bit holder. So what I'm thinking I might do is I might actually get a rod and just weld the bit onto the rod and then just feed it up through it and see if I can get it that way. I'll have a think and I'll see what I can come up with. I can't get the sump off. Marvellous. That's brilliant. So yeah, basically I can't change the piston without taking the engine out. I'm not doing that. I'm just not taking the bloody engine out. If I knew then, do you know what? I'm going to JB weld the crack in the piston. I hate doing it. I hate bodging stuff, but to be honest with you, doing that, if it works, it works. If not, I'm no worse off than where I am now at this moment in time, so it's worth a shot. JB Weld is amazing stuff, incidentally. I've heard of many people repairing stuff with it before to good effect, and I've seen the effects of it myself. So a little smear of it in the crack on the piston, and I'm going to put the head on, and yeah, hopefully it'll work. As I said, I do believe that crack was there before I ever even had this mishap, so if that's the case, that crack has been there for a while, so this is actually better than it was before. So anyway, right, I'll put all the bolts back into the sump that I actually took out. The hits just keep on coming. This, ladies and gentlemen, is certifiably the maddest thing I've ever done on a car. I'm about to repair a piston with JB Weld. Yeah, I know, it's a crazy thing to do. You can make all the comments you want and say I'm being lazy or whatever, but taking this engine out, well, what I replace the engine or I replace the engine. One way or another, at least this is worth a punt. I'm going to throw the new cylinder head onto it and leave it to dry for kind of 24 to 48 hours, and then throw it all back together again and see what happens. We'll just wait and see. But either way, I don't think that leak was going through to the sump, like, or to the bottom end. It was just kind of the crown, if you know what I mean. Right, okay, so we'll see what happens. I'm going to let that set, cylinder head back on tomorrow, and we'll reconvene. Okay, so it's the following day, and where we left off yesterday was I put the sump back on because I couldn't get it off because 2 of the bolts were being blocked by the adapter plate, which would necessitate taking the whole engine off so I could get the adapter plate off, and I wasn't going down that route. To be honest with you, I kind of threw my toys out of the pram and I repaired the cracked piston with JB Weld. Now, the piston wasn't cracked all the way across or anything like that, and my belief was that the crack was there for quite some time. Do I believe the JB Weld is going to last? No, I don't really, to be honest with you. I'm not that thick, but I'm thick enough to do it though, all the same, because yeah, the alternative is I change the whole engine anyway. So, you know, I've really got nothing to lose at this point in time. That's why I'm trying it, okay? So before you kind of go ripping me apart in the comments. Now, I also noticed when I reviewed my footage last night that I didn't show you a damn thing of what I was doing in the footage. The camera was pointing at the press there rather than the piston. So I'll show you how it looks now. Now, this is an extreme close-up of number 3 piston, okay? So you can see there's a bit of impact damage there. Now, that was not caused by the valve, okay? The valve, the head doesn't show corresponding damage, and that's nowhere near the valve, okay? That is from a dodgy injector or pre-detonation or something along those lines. And if you looked at the piston, there was also a little impact mark where the crack was. So that's what I think actually happened. We had a dodgy injector. I've since had the injectors overhauled. Now, you can see there is the slightest little skim of JB Weld on that part there, okay? You can see it up closely there. Try to get the camera's shadow out of the way. And to be honest, it's quite smooth, and there's no sharp corner or edge or anything like that that's going to catch anything. But yeah, as I said, the realist in me knows full well it's not going to work, but you know, we have to try it. So what I've also done is in your absence, I cleaned the face off the block. A little bit of oil squirted out one of the holes, so I just have to take care of that. I'll show you that now. So you can see the block is fairly well cleaned up. I used a combination of a brass wire wheel and a bit of emery paper and then a blowgun. I have a little battery operated compressor, which it has a limited number of uses, to tell you the truth, this yoke, but for things like this where my compressor is over in the shed over there in the garage, so the airline doesn't reach out, that's basically all I have. The van's immobile. I got absolutely screwed by getting stuck out here with it. So yeah, basically you use what you have at your disposal. So that did the trick for just blowing out all the passengers. It's very, very important if you're ever doing a cylinder head that you make sure that the bolt holes for the head bolts are blown out, because the last thing you want is the bolt to be hydrolocked and essentially you to be torquing against a pool of water or oil down the bottom of it, rather than torquing against the shoulder of the bolt. Because what will happen is the head will warp and you'll blow your head gasket, and then you're back to square one. So you have to blow them out and you have to make sure that everything is clean. So anyway, next step is to just give that a last wipe with some brake cleaner is what I'm going to use here. I'm going to give it a last wipe with brake cleaner, and I'm going to start about putting the head on. My wife went off at the Golf. Guess where the head gasket is? Yep, it's in the boot of the Golf. Right, well, I suppose I can clean things up around the engine bay and that until she gets back. Oh yeah. Okay, so one thing I can do is I can put the injectors in at this point in time, so at least that's something. So I've cleaned out the ports in the head. To be honest with you, I'm looking at the nozzles of the injectors, and these were overhauled probably about 4,000 miles ago, and they're fairly grubby. But nonetheless, they're going in. And oh, by the way, before you ask, no, I don't have new copper seal washers. We're going to just have to make do with this. So they come in here. Alright, so that is the injectors installed. So the next thing we can do is we can put in our glow plugs. So I may as well do that now as well. Okay, right, so that's the glow plugs and injectors installed. That didn't take very long, but at least it's another job ticked off the list. Put the return lines on these injectors as well, and there'll be another one to go there, so I'll get that one now as well. Okay, so when you're doing this, you have to set the engine to an initial position, okay? So what I've done is I set the number 1 cylinder so that it's before top dead center. So as I rotate the engine now, the piston is going to be coming up, but it's not at the top of its stroke yet. And what I've done is I've set the camshaft in the head to roughly around the top of the compression, the position it'll be at the top of the compression stroke on number 1. So that basically lines up the flat on the back of the camshaft. So essentially what that means is we can line up the camshaft, and then once we've lined up the camshaft, we can bring the engine up to top dead center and then stop it there, and then we can lock the camshaft, lock the pump, and get our belt on then. So the problem is, if you were to do it another way, let's say for example number 2 and 3 had to come up before 1 and 4, then the valves in theory would be, well, the valves would be down on at least I'm just looking there, number 2 inlet. So the valve would be down on number 2 inlet, so that piston is going to hit that valve. So you're not going to be able to rotate it past that mark. Now, you're only going to be rotating it by hand, but you still don't want to be hitting pistons off valves. And anyway, you'd have to go back the ways to try and get to your point then as well, and it's not ideal. Keep the engine rotating in normal direction of rotation. So that's all set up now, and all I can do now is just wait for my wife to get back so I can get the bloody head gasket. Okay folks, it's show time. So first thing I want to do is I want to put the front pulley on. I couldn't put that on because the new one I got was also in the boot of the Golf, so I was fluting around doing a few other little bits and pieces. I actually put the wheels back on the Beetle as well in all the hilarity. So right, so next thing, yeah, as I said, bottom pulley. Okay, so just like the head bolts, the bolt for the bottom pulley is actually a stretch bolt, so it's one of those single use only jobs. And fortunately enough, a new one came with the timing belt kit. Although mind you, I wouldn't really be taking this off if I was doing a timing belt, generally speaking. It was just for the fact that this took itself off. Well, I did take it off inadvertently, if the truth be told. So right, I've got a bit of tread lock on that there now. So we do it up to 88 foot-pounds. Sorry, 88 newton meters, and then give it a 90-degree turn. So that's not going to be all that easy, but we'll figure it out. So it can only go on one way. There's a flat on the crankshaft. Some of the older ones used to be keyed, and that was a problem in itself. Alright, so that goes in there. And we're gonna. I have a bar with a bolt in it, which I'm going to bolt on there, and that's going to keep the it's going to keep the engine from turning. In theory, in practice it'll probably just break the bolt, and then I'm bollocksed. Okay, so the torque wrench is set to 88. Now the way I'm going to have to do it is, the only socket I have that'll actually fit that nut is actually this one here, that's in this spanner that did all the damage in the first instance. But what I'll do is I'll clip onto it. It's still a socket as well, so we'll be able to get a good turn on that. So we'll torque it up, see how we get on, and then we'll get it and try and get her 90 degrees after that, which is probably going to be the fun part, but anyway. Alright, that was relatively painless. I must have done something wrong. Okay, so that's 88. Okay, so now, so I need to go 90 degrees on this. That's going to be, oh, Jesus Christ, that's tight. And that's 45 degrees, and I'm pushing it with my foot. This doesn't strike me as right. Okay, let's do a bit of googling. Yeah, no, apparently it's right. So I just have to bite my top lip and give it hell. I may need a breaker bar. Let's just go try and get it full 45 degrees.
That is not moving. That is fully tight. No, that can't be right. That's not budging an inch. I literally cannot get that bolt any tighter. I mean, I have tried everything, and no matter what I put on the pulley to stop it from turning, it breaks or just won't hold it or whatever. And I just, like, I don't even get a budge out of the bolt. It is stitched in there now. So, I mean, yeah, the only thing I can think of is now is at this point in time is bring it to a Volkswagen garage who has the proper tool and get them to tighten it for me after I've gotten everything else done. I think that's probably the most sensible thing to do. I mean, putting it in gear, all that happens is when you try and turn it, you can feel the springs in the dual mass flywheel loading up, and the last thing I need to do is go and break my dual mass flywheel, because I think at that stage I'd be getting Maguire and Patterson to sort this van out for me at that stage. Anyway, right, look, it's as tight as I can get it. We'll sort that out at a later stage. Let's get the head on. Next thing to do is I have everything cleaned. I'm going to do a final look over everything, make sure that it's all clean. I'm going to put the head gasket on, and I'm going to put the head gasket on and then put the head on. Alright, so here's the new head gasket, obviously. So take it out of its pack and inspect it, make sure that everything is alright with the gasket, because you only want to do this job once, I can assure you. I bought a Mark II Golf a while back with a TD engine in it, 1.9 TD, a 1Y engine, and the guy I bought it off said, oh yeah, no, I was doing all the gaskets in the engine. I said I'd do the head gasket as well. Well, the head gasket was blown, so I took the head off. He had made no attempt at cleaning anything on the mating surfaces, which is the reason why it blew. Now I did the head gasket again anyway, and the engine was 100% after that. Lovely engine that, actually, the 1Y in the Golf. So that goes on there, alright. And I remember I was saying about doing I'll show you where it goes now. I just realised you can't see. Remember I was saying about the making guide studs. I don't need to do that, and the simple reason for that is if you look down here, you can see there's a dowel. Now the dowel is what's holding the head gasket in place, and the dowel will also serve to hold the head itself in place. So I've done a bit of prep work, as I said. I've put the glow plugs, all of the pipe fittings and everything like that onto it. So literally it's a case of putting the head on now, and we'll feed our bolts in then. I have new bolts for it as well. Okay, so I think what I need to do is I need to get the inlet manifold in first. So get that down and then lift it into place. So I'll use the two mounts for the engine cover to lift it into position. That's the job. That's it. Okay, so now I'll just drop one of the old bolts in till I get the new ones in, the new ones ready. Alright, that's not going anywhere now. Right. Bloody hell, that was a hassle. Alright, so now what we need to do is we need to oil the bolts
and we drop them in. You just basically dip them in a thing of oil, or I have a little squirty can of oil I'll use, and you drop them in, and we'll just tighten them down by hand, and then there's a torquing sequence, and we'll go through that now. Alright, so I've one of the first 2 bolts in here now, so I'm actually just going to screw them down home all the way. I'll sort it out now in a second. I'll take out the bolt that I put in temporarily, and we'll put that separate so we don't mix them up. Alright. Why is that not going in the hole? Let's see if we can get this one in. All right. These take an angle torque as well, but the difference between this and the bolt on the crankshaft is that they don't. You're not fighting against something turning on you while you're trying to tighten it. The stupid setup that is, if ever I've seen it. Why could they not have just used a locking plate? Lock wire would even have done the job. In actual fact, you know what? That's what I'm going to do. Until I get it sorted out, I'm going to lock wire the bloody thing. Many's bolt I've lock wired and has never come loose on me. Alright, okay, so now I'm going to just wind them down by hand, or just with a light setting on the impact gun just to get them down, and then we can set about torquing them up. Okay, as I said, it's literally just to wind it down. There's no torque on this at all. Alright, so now that's the easy bit. The hard bit now is to torque them all up and get them all sorted out in sequence. Okay, so the torquing sequence is as follows. It is 40 Newton meters, then 60 Newton meters, and then 90 degrees, and then a further 90 degrees. But they're nice long bolts, so the 90 degrees is not as difficult as that epoxy bolt and the pulley. So, number 1 is going to be, I have a list here. So this is going to be number 1, right in the middle. Okay, so that's the 10 bolts up to 40. Right, so we're going to go up to 60 now. Alright, now this is where we switch to our breaker bar, because that is now the torquing done. The way it works now is you literally just, you turn them 90 degrees and then you turn them a further 90 degrees. Okay, so obviously this has a ratchet on it, okay? So in order to know that I've gone 90 degrees, I'm going to use the hole in the little adapter that goes from half to 3/8 drive. And when that's perpendicular to the camshaft, then I know, well, yeah, perpendicular to the camshaft, then I know we're all right. All right. So it needs to go back a little bit there, just to, there's one. All right. So that's 90 degrees. So we now need to go further 90 degrees. So yeah, that's where you start really biting your top lip and giving it hell. So no time like the present. All right, that's one. All right. That, ladies and gentlemen, is the cylinder head tightened down. So, happy days. Now we can just start reconnecting stuff. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reconnect that turbo. What I did while I had the here, let me have a look at this. What I did while I had the time while the head gasket was off on its adventures around the town, I cleaned out the bolt holes in the turbo flange, so the bolts should just drop in and tighten up nicely. And I spent a bit of time doing a few other little bits and pieces just to make my life easier. So hopefully that will have paid off, and things should start to go back together quite easily now. I doubt I'll get the timing belt done today, but if I can get everything else done, at least that'll be something. So let's, as I said, start with the turbo. Okay, so the turbo is back bolted up to the exhaust flange. I spore you the tedium of watching me doing that and me trying to film it, and it was awkward. It's down the bottom of the engine basically. So anyway, it's on. Just take my word for it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tackle that bloody wiring harness bracket that goes onto the cooling pipe spigot down here. And I put on the cooling pipe spigot while the head is off. So just to make my life a little bit easier. So let's see. Okay folks, I think I'm going to call it a night at this point. I'm getting pretty tired, and we all know what happens when I get tired. Mistakes happen. So what I need to do is I need to have a think about how I'm going to tighten that bottom pulley nut. I'm going to figure out how to do it myself. I'm thinking what I'll do is I'll make a tool, little bit of welding and drilling and stuff like that, with a bit of angle iron or something like that, you know. Anyway, I'll have a think and come up with something. I'll just show you what I have done. I did a couple of bits and pieces off camera, nothing particularly interesting, but I'll show you anyway. So you'll see the camshaft pulley is on, the fuel pump pulley is on, and obviously the backing plate there is on. I have reconnected some coolant hoses, and I have the that pipe bracket, or that wiring bracket there. The pipe spigot was actually on upside down. I have my inlet pipe on, and yeah, that's basically it. So progress is being made, but like, it's going to take me a bit of time just to even clear up this mess I've made here. So that's another thing that needs to be done before I go anywhere. But you know, look, I'll get back to this anyway, and yeah, we'll I think there's probably, I'm kind of thinking whether or not I upload this as a separate video. No, I won't. I'll put it all as one video. I'll get the timing belt done, get that on, and put oil and coolant in the engine, and we'll start it and see how we go. So yeah, I'll pick this up shortly. Okay, so it's the next day. So we're 3 days into it, and I'm glad I did actually walk away the next time, because I'm not happy with the way that bolt is on the bottom pulley. So I'm actually going to take it off and start again. I actually made up a little tool. Crude as it may be, it will be effective. So 3 holes drilled there, which will go into the 3 bolt holes on the pulley, and the nut is to allow me to hold onto it. So yeah, I knocked it together with a grinder and a drill, in fairness, on a welding plant. It's I didn't have the time to build a model to scale or to paint it. So anyway, right, yeah, next thing to do is take off that nut and start again. So step one is to bolt the tool on. Okay, so I'm going to do up the bolts holding the tool on. Okay, so the tool is on, the breaker bar is on. So now I want to try and it's fairly well on there anyway, I can assure you. So let's see now. I just want to get it in such a way that it's braced against something, so I'm not having to definitely doing the job anyway. So that's, the bolt is coming out anyway. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take it out all the way, and I'm going to take the Loctite off and put fresh Loctite on. Okay, right, so clean the threads, get everything sorted out, and try again. And this time what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark the bolt so that I know that I've got a quarter turn on it as well. I didn't do that yesterday either. This is what I'm talking about when you get tired and you start making silly mistakes. So sometimes you're better off just walk away from something. If you're going to start making silly mistakes, walk away and go back to it with a fresh head the following day. The reason I'm doing this is exactly that reason. You rush something, that's when things go tits up on you. Okay, so the buzzing noise you hear in the background is my little portable compressor, because what I'm going to do is I'm now going to clean out the threads inside the crankshaft as well. So I'm going to just spray in some brake cleaner first of all, and then I'm going to set about blowing it all out and that should do the trick. So yeah, it's definitely going to be a hell of a lot better than it was anyway. So yeah, we'll do that and I'll come back to you when it's done. Now, there we are. Did we get 90 degrees on that? You know what? I think we did. Another little shove. That's done. Right. Now I'm happy. If that bolt comes loose, I'll be a monkey's uncle. And I tell you what, my Nielsen breaker bar it's a great little yoke. Okay, so that's great. So now we can take the tool off as well. So yeah, and the great thing is now I always have that tool. So if I ever find myself having to do this bloody job again, I can do it a lot easier. So yeah, happy days. So yeah, next thing to do is I'm going to put the timing belt on. I'll probably do it tomorrow, but through the miracle of editing, you guys need not know. Day 174, and I'm still doing this job. Will it ever end? It's actually day 4, but I'm starting to feel that way, to be honest with you. I'm at the point now where I'm putting the timing belt on. So I have the fuel pump locked up now, and the way I went about doing that was a socket extension. So it fits perfectly. So that's that done. So next thing I need to do is I need to lock up the camshaft. And I'm thinking what I might be able to do is with the crankshaft, if I use a long enough bolt and put it through the pulley, it'll come out the other side and lock up against the crankcase. Now I have to be very careful that I don't put it up against the seal of the crankshaft oil seal, because that'd be a nice one now to ruin my oil seal. But I'll just try a very light nip on it. It'll just keep it in place while I put the belt on. It shouldn't be too bad anyway. The crankshaft isn't as inclined to move as the camshaft or the fuel pump particularly. The fuel pump fights against you continuously. So anyway, right, let's get the camshaft locked up next. Alright, so everything is locked up now, and I have the new tensioner. I have a new top idler pulley. I have new bolts. I put a new stud into the head as well to accept the tensioner, because one came with the kit. I used a new bolt for the bottom pulley, so I'm using a full kit basically, which is great. That bolt with the that bolt going through the bottom pulley seemed to have worked as well for locking up the engine. which is great, so long as I remember to take the damn thing out before I try and start it. I'll be making very, very sure that I've checked everything over 3 and 4 times before even trying to start this. So anyway, I'll show you now what way I have things set up. Okay, so the camshaft is locked at the other end through the slot, and that's on loosely, so it's still free to turn without turning the camshaft. The fuel pump is locked, the crankshaft is locked. So what we can do now is we can start feeding our belt on, and then we can set our tension, and the movement in the camshaft will allow for us to make our adjustments and that, and get the timing spot on. So and then I will turn the engine over until I'm blue in the face to make sure that nothing is hitting inside before we try and crank on it. So let's get that belt on. It's an SKF belt, so I trust SKF with my life as far as their quality is concerned. They make all sorts of industrial bearings and everything. So yeah, I actually see a lot of SKF stuff in my job as well. Changed career recently, folks, by the way, in case you wondered. I don't work in the airport anymore. I am now working in a power station. These gloves are... I actually paid decent money for these gloves, and they are useless. They rip if you look at them squarely. So I'm going to take them off for this job because they're just getting caught up in the belt. Black Rhino. Shite. Black Rhino shite. Alright, I know you guys can't really see what I'm doing very well, but I'll show you the end result. I'll come back to you when I have this done. I need to just push the little arm around on the I need to push the arm around on the tensioner so it goes into the little slot. Okay folks, the moment of truth is upon us. I have the belt on and tensioned, I've oil in the engine, I've got the injector lines on, rocker cover on. I'll let you have a look around it now. You can see what I mean. And I think I'm pretty happy at this stage, to be honest with you. I'm going to do one final turnover by hand, make sure that everything's 100%. There's one thing. Put the oil cap back on. I put a little bit of oil in that end and a bit of oil in the normal filler, and put the filler cap on here as well. So they're the worst mistakes I make. We're not doing too badly. Alright, so bar the engine over again. Once the engine turns over by hand and doesn't interfere with anything, then anything else after that is minor. Well, we hope. How unlucky can I get? Alright, now I'm not going to run it for long because there's no water pump, no alternators, there's no auxiliary belt whatsoever. So let's bleed the system first of all. I have the spanner is off the bottom. I used a ratchet this time as well because at least if I had forgotten to take a ratchet off, it would have just spun the other way and it would have been fine. It's just such a stupid mistake to make, and I'm still kicking myself over it. But anyway, let's get to cranking. See what happens. Can't say I'm not a bit nervous. I have the microphone with me so you can hear me talking. Right. So we should build oil pressure as well. Actually, that's the thing I want to do before I crank it. I want to check the oil level because the dipstick is not the most accurate thing in the world, and I want to make a mark on it. Or find out why it's not the most accurate thing in the world. Yeah, like I put 4 litres of oil in this engine and it's not showing up anything on the dipstick, so that's obviously not right. You know what, I'm going to fix that before I even start it. because that's really annoying, and once I crank it, it's going to circulate oil and the level won't be right. Alright, I shortened the top end of the dipstick, so enough of the cliffhangers. Let's get this show on the road and see if we get fuel through and if it sounds alright. Okay, we've no low oil pressure, we've no oil pressure warning light, so let's just check the connection. The wire's broken. It's going to be a fun one to try and get at. Okay, I'll fix that and come back to you. Alright, yes, I'm getting impatient too. Anyway, there's a proper crimped on connection there on that now, so we should have a low oil pressure warning. So let's have a go. Alright, now we have low oil pressure. Okay, that sounded promising. Let's button up our injection lines. And I'm going to want to set the timing as well, so hopefully the VCDS software cooperates with me. It won't, but I can always live in hope. Now, where did I put my spanner for the glow plugs? Okay. All right, now let us pray. Let's start this beast and see how she runs. I don't like the way that rubs against it. It doesn't actually touch the timing belt, but you know, I'm just not all that happy about it. Right, let's see how we get on. It should actually start now. Well, hey! Alright, it's up and running. Settling down now. It's a bit noisy because there's no exhaust on it. And it's obviously going to be a bit smoky as well, you know. So let's just leave it run for a little while. As I said, I don't want to run it for too long because there's no coolant circulating. No coolant in the engine full stop. The indicator's on. Let's just give it a little bit of time, folks. Let's not be too impatient. God, I thought the oil pressure light was on for a second. No, it's just a generator light. Right, let's get some coolant into it. Yeah, well, at least it's running anyway, so it's... Now I need to get the timing all dialed in and all that. But it's certainly a hell of a lot closer to the mark. Oat antifreeze and coolant. It's the healthy stuff. It's got granola bits and everything in it. Now, it's not pouring out on the ground anyway, so that's definitely a good sign. I'll put the auxiliary belt on now in a minute and get at least get the coolant circulating. I'm not going to put all of the time, well, I suppose I could put the time belt cover on at this stage. Yeah, I will, because I need to put the bottom pulley on as well anyway, so at the moment there's no bottom pulley on. Well, there's the important bottom pulley, but not the unimportant one. Oh no, wait, I forgot it. Hey. Alright, let's get the water in now. You can kind of go some way towards burping it just by squeezing the hoses. At least this way there's definitely coolant around the block.
Right, let's just start it up again for a minute and see how we're looking. Wasn't too hard to start, in fairness. Sounding a lot better now. What we need to do is put everything back together again and check the timing of the fuel pump. I'd say the fuel pump timing is miles out. I may recheck the camshaft timing as well. Yeah, let's finish getting stuff put back together. I'll come back to you when it's done. Okay folks, so the engine is all wrapped up pretty much, aside from a few little basic jobs like bleeding the coolant system and stuff like that. I have the V-belt back on. I've left off the coolant expansion bottle and the timing belt cover because they're things I'm going to be wanting to check before we kind of say the job is actually complete. But let's just have a listen and see how it's running now. Sounded pretty sweet to me. Alright. So, there's only one thing for it, folks. And this is the bit I didn't get to do the last time. Take it for a bloody drive. So now I'm just going to tidy up my tools. And we're going to do that. I'm just going to actually... Let's see how the coolant level is looking. We'll just put a bit of water in it. Okay folks, I'd be lying if I didn't say I was a little bit apprehensive, but there's nothing for it but to drive it and see how we get on. I'm hoping that all of my problems that I've had with this engine went away with that cylinder head on fuel pump. We'll find out. A little bit hesitant on the starting there, and I'm wondering it's just the valve timing isn't 100% dialed in, but we'll figure that out at some stage. Anyway, light, it's actually getting dark. We're moving. It's pulling all right. Actually, it's pulling really nice. I don't want to say anything yet. The engine's operating all right. Sounds smooth. Once we get out in the main road, we'll see how we get on. Okay, we're out in the main road. Third gear. It's smooth. I think the new fuel pump has certainly sorted out the issue with the kind of jerky throttle response and that kind of issue. Given the fact that this has never had a kind of the hammer mod done or anything like that on it, it's a good kind of standard, if you know what I mean. Now I'm watching the temperature gauge like a hawk, This is the... I didn't go mad on bleeding the coolant system out. I just wanted some of the air to work its way back into the coolant bottle. So I could stand for it to get a little bit hotter for the low level light to come on. I may need to bleed the coolant system, but what I won't have is it overheating badly. It's always the way when you want people to get a shift on, they won't do it. It's a T5 transporter in front of me and he's going over the ramps here at like 2 miles an hour. Right, so let's get out onto the main stretch of road here. There's a dual carriageway here, so I'm not going to go out onto the motorway. Not until I bleed it. But I can't say it's any way up on power, to tell you the truth. Starting to get hot. Okay, we're overheating. We are actually overheating now. I'm babying it. Just going to try and get it back home. Okay, the temperature isn't going into the danger zone, but it's in the uncomfortable range. It was up at 3/4 there when I was giving it a bit of boot. Now it's at maybe 3/5, let's just say. It's above the red light in the middle. But I'm thinking I have to get back and have a look at that radiator and see if it's hot. If the radiator's not hot, and I'm really hoping it's not, then that's our problem. It's just the coolant system. I don't dare say that it's the head gasket that's not sealed. I couldn't deal with that. To be honest with you, I'd just take the engine out and change it. I'd put an AFN engine in it and be done with it. That's the only solution for it at this point. Like, you know, I mean, if this engine is, if it's not right now, it'll never be right. It's going to I'm bringing it to the dump. Or donating it to, oh, I don't know. Anyway, just occurred to me, the radiator fan's not on. It is the radiator. Oh, thank God. Right, look, I'm going to get the young lad to bed and come out and bleed it. Let it cool down a little bit. Actually, what we can do now when the engine's hot is see how it cranks over, and we'll know then whether or not we've got good compression still. Nothing wrong with that. I've no reason to believe the head gasket is gone. The radiator's stone cold. Thank God for that. I was really worried. Okay, it's very definitely getting dark, but let's see how we get on now. Okay, so it's driving fine. That's the end of the end result of all of this anyway. There doesn't seem to be anything untoward about it aside from the overheating issue before, but I'm hoping that that's now sorted. The temperature gauge is going up to where it should be now at this point in time, and yeah, we'll just have to see. It is better. It is definitely better. It's not at the critical point which it was the last time, but maybe there's still air in the system. Oh. You can tell I'm getting tired and fed up, folks. The top half of the radiator is cold and the bottom half is hot, so that's why we're getting some cooling now, but not enough. So I need to let a bit more air out of it. So with the engine running now, I'm going to just crack the bleeding screw and have a look and see how we get on. You couldn't actually make it up. The bloody bolt sheared. Oh, right. Okay, that came good in the end. I was able to get the old bit out without hassle. It just threaded out. Actually, I just got a little flathead screwdriver and picked it out, and it kind of unthreaded for me. So thank God for that. I had images of having to change the radiator or something like that, or try and drill that out. Would have been great crack. So yeah, anyway, right, problem sorted. I got more air out of the radiator. The whole radiator is now getting hot, which leaves me confident that I'm actually that we're all right. And yeah, so it's literally a case now. I'm going to take it into work tomorrow, and hopefully it'll be all right. So remains to be seen. But I think this video is long enough. So one man changing a cylinder head on the side of the road with the use of JB Weld in the process. That was a hassle. It really was. So anyway, look, I'll keep you updated with my progress. The next thing I have in mind is a much nicer job, and that is on the Golf. I want to install a new stereo on the Golf because the stereo that's in it is crap, but that involves, I actually want to change the aerial, the speakers, the head unit, the whole lot. So I'm going to do that. And I also have a new driver's seat for it because it's bloody uncomfortable. There's a lumbar support in it, which is very uncomfortable. So we're going to tackle the Golf next. So please do subscribe, and I'll keep you updated with my progress, and I'll chat to you soon. Thank you very much for watching this very long video.